Hello and welcome to What's New in Electronics 2019. I'm joined by Michael Ford from Aegis and Keith Bryant. Thanks for joining me, gentlemen. AIoT, it's coming apparently. Now, you had a really interesting keynote this morning, talking about Industry 4.0, how it's become a dirty word within the industry almost. And what struck me is that we're at a little bit of a crossroads, aren't we, where you've got companies become successful by being competitive, improving what they do, rather than going out and sharing what they do and how they became competitive with their competitors. It's taken an awful lot of education, re-education, breaking down some prejudices, I guess, with manufacturers. But also you've got this state where it became a marketing term, wasn't it? You know, it became a catchphrase. It became the thing that you could put a badge on everything. It's a bit like, it reminds me of the 1980s where you'd put a sticker that said turbo on the side of the car, even if it didn't have a turbo. And then they'd put it on Hoovers and they put it on everything. It became one of those phrases that had a cachet of we're moving forward. Your keynote brilliantly pulled apart the reality of where we're at, but this layer of AI, where do you think this is leading us, Michael?
The kind of damage that has been done, I guess, from the marketing side, I mean, it's not the fault of the machine vendors or anybody else. I mean, they've simply wanted to deliver to customers the next generation of their technologies. And that comes out in software that they call AI as well. People are looking for this cleverer and cleverer software that can, take the data and improve things. And it genuinely does that. I mean, there's been dozens of cases that I've seen that have been extremely impressive in doing that. But is that IIoT? Is that Industry 4.0? To an extent it is, but it's kind of like Industry 4.0 local to a line, local to a particular. And I used to call it industrial engineering in my day, where people would analyze the process and they would refine it and take out the waste. This is all good stuff, so I got nothing negative to say about that at all. And I think that the new technologies like CFX really help that environment, making machines talk to each other that have never been able to do so before, without NDAs being in place, without specific agreements, just being able to help each other out when they're just plugged into each other. But really that kind of distracts people from the real message of Industry 4.0, which is what I was saying has actually died. In that, Industry 4.0 was there to satisfy a business goal. In these times that we see taxes and tariffs and Brexit and all of these things happening, people need to be ready for anything. And to be ready for anything means that they have to be able to take whatever their new customers' demands are day by day and satisfy them. Now, you can't write down what they're going to be right now. Nobody knows. But it's not rocket science. We know we need to deliver on time to short notice with no stock in the delivery kind of chain. So how can we make our factories more responsive? This is what Industry 4.0 was supposed to address. But actually, in talking with you, you've given me a great idea for the next generation, which is not Industry 4.0, it's AI 4.0. Yes. Because what we're seeing from software and the ability for genuine intelligence to start to manage the factory as a whole, I think is going to bring some new focus to Industry 4.0.
Do you think, Keith, you made the brilliant point just now that, well, you tell me again what it was, this game changer when a guy stood up and said about being able to retrofit.
Yeah, I totally agree with Michael. I've been to Industry 4.0 events for 4 years now. And a lot of the major players that will be, our customers are so, I can use the word, I think, hateful of Industry 4.0.
That's a strong word.
That, if someone comes in and actively tries to sell them a product and says this is Industry 4.0 compatible, they're probably going to throw them out of their office. Because the stuff that we've seen, which is allegedly Industry 4.0 compatible, is absolutely amazing. And as you said, it's a little bit like when people used to put turbo stickers on the back of their cars in the 80s, whether they had a turbo or not, just because they thought it was what everybody wanted to see. There's a lot of issues, but at the end of the day, the aim of this was to improve the production process. It was to reduce waste. It was to reduce inventory. It was to make us leaner and fitter and more responsive to whatever was going to be happening today and tomorrow. And that's still the main aim.
Yeah.
It's been hijacked in certain ways by some people who've looked at it as a way of selling new equipment or a way of selling a new technology. But as I say, I can't remember who it was, but one of the CFX guys stood up at a conference at the end of last year and said, we will make CFX retrofittable, which means you can put it on the lines that you have today. You don't have to throw everything away, buy new sets of equipment, but you can actually get at least some of the advantages with what you have today, just by maybe adding another layer of technology, maybe adding a management information system, but you can actually improve what you have with what you have.
Yes.
And for me, that's the real game changer, because if we just say it's machine intelligence, it's smart factory, doesn't matter what word you use, but if it improves your yield and reduces your costs and reduces the manufacturing time, then it's doing what everybody needs to do for those companies to remain competitive.
Yeah. And those terms, I mean, everyone has been used to being sold machinery that will improve productivity. The benefits of CFX, Industry 4.0, whatever you want to call it, whatever aspect of it you want to look at, they're not often aren't black and white, are they? Because it's a business by business case. You can find improvements in specific parts of a line, specific parts of your the way you conduct your whole business. And often those changes can affect the culture of the business. So it strikes me in some ways that to take this on board properly, you've got to look at the root and branch, not just the pieces of equipment on the production line.
Yeah, the way I kind of explain it to people is that there are three kind of layers for this whole Industry 4.0. Layer 1 is the base layer that connects all of the machines in the factory, gives you your closed loop solutions, a machine to machine, and machine vendors can offer 4.0 solutions genuinely using information from other areas. Layer 1, this is already, I'd say, becoming mature even. Not so much seeing it actually in manufacturing, but certainly for the machine vendors, they are proving it out all the time. And there are announcements coming up where they're going to be doing these things using CFX. So that whole layer, for me, I'm happy that is kicked off and is running. Layer 2 is the MES layer, or the layer of software that is actually governing the factory. And a lot of that software is actually people software in people's brains. There are the IoT-led MES software, which we're proud of. But it's the utilization of the data from layer 1 contextualized to create actionable decisions. This is then the next area that people are looking at. What tools are there that are genuinely ready to get that data in real time and support the decisions and action decisions that are made? You then get to the layer 3, which traditionally has been ERP systems, which are actually a little bit challenged by the day-to-day activities. They're more made for month to month or even year to year, which are now going to be replaced by these genuine artificial intelligence. This is where AI 4.0 is going to actually live, which is having the ability to look at the whole factory floor, just as a factory manager would do today. But of course, it's got the capability now with this level 1 and level 2 to understand every aspect of manufacturing second by second. And so be able to then offer the potential solution or even make decisions automatically. So these three layers are very important for people to understand. Industry 4.0 is not just layer 1. It's not just layer 2. It's actually all three layers. Yeah. And we're now progressing very quickly toward completing these three layers.
Do you think those decisions, those changes that businesses have to make, it's in a lot of ways it's an evolution of what's going on? But you made the good point of, okay, let's look at how efficient your line is, your factory is. And there's often a disconnect between where a business pitches their efficiency and the reality of that efficiency. And you made another point of the printer being the dumbest machine on a line, and a lot of the faults and mistakes can be traced back to that. So on one level, you've got a level of black and white honesty that a company has to look at, okay, we've got gaps here, we need to sort those out, which can again challenge the existing structure of the company, the existing politics within the company even. And then you've got the pure physical side of it.
Yeah. When I visit companies, even away from Industry 4.0, getting them to be honest about rework and scrap and costs is the hardest thing that it's possible to do, but it is the one thing that you have to do before you can look at improving anything. Yeah. I've visited factories where they say, oh yeah, we don't have any scrap. So I say, okay, well, show me the bins. And you don't have a bin, you have this huge room full of stuff that's, but it's only possibly scrap, we don't know. Yeah, and the things that get lost, as Michael has described, between the layers, is the real hard part, and it's a personal thing, and it's hard to sit down, but you have to take even at operators and inspector levels, and you have to explain to them that we need to know this warts and all, because you can't fix a problem unless you know what the problem is. Yeah. And you can't make improvements, and you can't move towards a leaner, more efficient, smart factory type solution unless you really start with the truth. And yeah, that's the hardest part.
It really is. I've seen some classic examples over the years, where we've been into somewhere talking about lean supply chain, and they say, yeah, there's nothing wrong with our supply chain, everything's fine, everything's brilliant. So I asked the question, do you do a stock check? Oh, yeah. Every 6 months we check the stock. And I say, well, what does that entail? 2 or 3 days, we stop everything, we count all of the materials, and we do a correction then into ERP. And I said, well, and what is the value of the adjustment that you have to make? Okay, it is about $1 million. This one particular company, which was down in Mexico, actually, they said it's $1 million, and I said every 6 months it's $1 million. They said, yeah, it's the nature of SMT. You oversupply, you've got spoilage, you've got reels. It's normal. I said, okay, it's normal that you stop your plant for 6 days in the year. That's 1.5% of your total productivity just wiped off the board, and you're throwing away $2 million a year, and yet you tell me there's nothing wrong with your supply chain. Let me introduce lean materials that eliminates both of those problems. And then they wake up. But it's the fact that people keep these old practices going that amazes me. How can they continue to do this? It's like productivity. A company came up and said to me, they think 10% is fine. How can you think 10% is fine? I mean, I thought 30% or 50% was atrocious. But then they said, well, this is what we live with because we've got to change over. Why have you got to change over? They said, oh, well, because everything we make is different. Can't you optimize it somehow so that you reduce the amount of change? Hard to do by a person.
Yeah, it's the classic comment that we always hear when you go around and talk to these people. No, it's okay, we've always done it like this.
Exactly, like that's a good reason,
Yeah.
But this is what Industry 4.0 and AI 4.0 is really going to smash. Because we've got to get rid of this kind of burden that we've been carrying for so long, thinking that is. Yeah. It is, and it's a burden to moving forward. It's a burden to being successful. Some companies have achieved it. They don't talk about it because they're happy. And they're happy that they're beating their competitors left, right, and center. But the industry as a whole has to come to terms. And the way that we like to bring that to people is in the form of standards at low cost, that people can afford and people can implement without having to spend like $300 million like certain companies do over in China to achieve smart factories. That's completely out of order for most people. the knowledge that people can make that break and relieve that burden without significant investment, that's what we're all about.
And, it's something that then it can work and becomes of interest to a small EMS company rather than, someone that could even invest millions if they wanted. Your average family-run, probably, EMS company, they couldn't even countenance some of the issues they would have to get their heads around. Whereas if AI 4.0 becomes, I should trademark that, becomes the key, then maybe that's an in for that size of business.
Yeah, the real interesting thing here is that we understand what's going on between the US and China right now. And we know that certain mobile phones are made in China and shipped to the US, which may not be so easy to do in the future or even now.
Yeah.
What if that manufacturer were to knock on the door of a local family-run EMS company and say, guys, would you love to make the latest generation product? Are they equipped to do that? Would they be able to do that? Do they need to get into the position where, of all of the hundreds of companies that this opportunity could go for, this is the one that they would choose? So they've got rid of their burdens, they're able to offer a lower cost per product for the overall business case, and they can be part of that future. These are the opportunities. I mean, Brexit and all of this stuff. There are an equal number of opportunities there than there are problems, because after all the dust blows over, we are still going to be consuming the same amount of product. They will have to be built somewhere, somehow. Are you going to be the ones who take the challenge and rise above it with new technologies, or are you just going to sit there and panic?
And Keith, do you think people will step up to that challenge?
People are already. I wouldn't say in the US, but I mean, we're seeing an increase of manufacturing into Eastern Europe. We're seeing an interesting movement from China into Thailand, into Vietnam, even some companies looking at Cambodia, because I was speaking to a Chinese company a few weeks ago, and they said, we're going to move 7 production lines to somewhere else.
Somewhere else.
Yeah, and it was going to be somewhere else in Asia that's a relatively low cost. Yeah. And I said, but the trade war is going to be over. And they said, yes, this one. And again, that's the Chinese thinking.
Yes.
They all got burnt by this because none of them were expecting it to happen. And they're going to make sure that it's not going to burn them if it happens again. So they're going to move a significant part of their manufacturing to somewhere else. But of course, it has to be efficient, it has to be effective, and everything else. And these are the guys who are going to be starting to drive the sort of things that Michael's talking about, because they have to. And it's so much easier to do it if you're building the factory, because you can build in the stuff that you need. And also you can build in the mentality to the people, and that's sometimes the biggest challenge that people have going forward. It's changing the mentality of everybody from the operators to the senior managers.
Yeah. Well, again, it's root and branch, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just, we'll change. Traditionally, it was, we'll put a more efficient machine in, end of. Now, it's utterly different. It's a change of thinking for everyone, from guys on the production line to guys sitting in the boardroom, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really making people see the holistic model of the entire process, from design of a product all the way through then to the consumer side of that. And considering the whole of the business costs, what happens in manufacturing is really not as significant as people think, and so that gives scope for investment and relocation more than people think. And there are materials companies on this back wall here who are already seeing benefits of this coming from China, exactly in line with what you were saying. The world is being turned upside down to an extent, and this kind of activity generates opportunities. So people do really need to be ready.
Yeah.
That's why I love this. The only consistent thing that I've seen in the 30 years that I've been in the industry is change.
Yes. Yeah. But what you said just before, nothing encourages change more than being burnt. If people see they're losing out in some way, then there's a way to improve it, then they're going to be on it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the thing that's driving the smart factory, improved communication and lean stock and everything else is people realize they have to do this now to survive. the days of having so much fat in the manufacturing process that, if something went wrong and you had to shut your line down for 3 or 4 days, the overall scheme of things, it didn't really matter.
Yeah.
Now people are worried about how long it takes to change from one product to another. The world is changing that fast, and as Michael says, it gives opportunities for people who can help companies move in this direction.
Getting back to the theme of the roundtable, though, AI, are we at a stage where you can reliably go into a company and say, yes, this is AI, or is it machine learning, or is it?
There's a lot of different terms out there, and I think that, again, the marketing people have got hold of them and they've ran with them. And I do work in marketing myself, so what am I going to say? But the reality for me personally is that there is a clear differentiation between real AI and other. Now, a software algorithm is created by a software developer following a set of rules. So the software will look at a situation, assess it in terms of understanding the kind of success of a decision that's been made, but the basis of that measurement has been predefined by the software programmer from his experience and knowledge, or from user input by putting in parameters. So all of the decisions that software makes, no matter how clever it may seem to be, have all been pre-programmed, and they are a result of the great technology that, for example, a machine vendor or whoever else has, and that they've built into that software. It's all great stuff of very high value, but it's not strictly AI. It is an advanced algorithm, and it is maybe an intelligent algorithm. That's fine. True AI is where software begins to think for itself. How does it do that? Well, it's the same scenario where it's looking at a situation, determining the success of a decision being made or change being made. But then it's looking one step beyond that and saying, well, I thought that was going to happen, but actually it didn't. Why didn't that happen? And it looks then back statistically over the decisions it's made and thought, well, actually that didn't work out as creating a benefit. So I'm going to change that parameter myself, and I'm going to create a new rule around that, because I've noticed that when this happens, it's better, and when it doesn't happen, it's not good. This is the software reprogramming itself. That is AI. So the manifestation of that may be somebody talks in a different way from a robot or something like that, or does something in a slightly different way, or suggests a slightly different solution. But that effect starts, it's like a baby learning, it has arms and legs waving about, and it learns through interaction. And the AI, the true AI, will do the same thing. And it will start to learn progressively, slowly at first, but then quite rapidly, until it is an expert in the factory. Maybe within 6 months, it would have enough knowledge about manufacturing as somebody working in manufacturing for 30 years.
Yes.
And so therefore, you're able to adapt to new situations much faster than you were before, when you were dependent on the power of a human mind. So that, for me, is the difference where AI is coming. And is that something that's realistic today? Yes, I believe it is. It may already have been invented. A lot of people don't share everything with everybody, but a lot of very influential people are now very serious about true AI, and this needs to be differentiated from what we're calling just an advanced algorithm.
Michael, that was the perfect definition of the difference between AI and machine. Let's call it machine intelligence or machine learning. That was absolutely wonderful. I'm going to keep that one in my head. Thank you.
Thanks. It's going to be a very interesting 12 months to 2 years, I think, ahead, isn't it? Like you say, I think quite a few things will come to the surface that have been bubbling away for a while, and it is exciting, and it's unfortunate that Industry 4.0 has become tarnished, because the core reasons for it, why wouldn't you want it? And it's just a shame that these terms do become abused and misused and misunderstood, actually, a lot of the time, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about the abuse of the term is that people are talking about it, have been talking about it, making people aware of the role of software, whether within machines or within the factory, which is great news for all of us, actually. However, the potential damage is that people get to a point where they no longer believe it. And in that situation, you need a step change for people to wake up and realize, something has changed, something is different here. We have a new opportunity. And if they really still have the will to go forward with that, that's fine. So yeah, I would hate people to really be sat there listening to this thinking, AI, I've heard it all before, I've seen it all, I've got the machine, it's done deal. No. We're just scratching the surface right now.
Plus, we're living in changing times, I would say, with the US-China issues and Brexit that come along. It's people who realise that, okay, there's going to be opportunities here as well that are going to be the ones that can steal a march, maybe. Thank you for your time. It's been illuminating and interesting. And hopefully see you again, 12 months' time. We'll see where we are again. AI 5.0, maybe.
Who knows?
Yes, thanks very much.